I still remember the early days with Lucas as if they were painted in the brightest of colors. Our relationship was built on a foundation of mutual dreams, shared passions, and the unspoken promise that we were each other's confidant. We had a life that looked effortless from the outside, a harmonious blend of laughter-filled evenings, lazy Sunday mornings, and ambitious plans for the future. Lucas was charming in a quiet, understated way. He was the kind of partner who remembered my favorite song, knew the way I liked my coffee, and always managed to surprise me with thoughtful gestures. It seemed that fate had conspired to bring together two souls that were destined to shine together. We spent countless hours discussing our future, buying a cozy apartment in a lively neighborhood, starting a family, and traveling to far-off destinations. Every conversation was a thread in the tapestry of our shared life, each moment a promise that our love was both rare and irreplaceable. I reveled in the security that Lucas provided, confident that our trust was unshakable. Our relationship, at its core, felt invincible, a fortress built on love, loyalty, and the belief that nothing could tear us apart. Yet, as the seasons changed, so did the subtle details of our day-to-day lives. What once felt like a seamless partnership slowly began to reveal tiny cracks in the veneer of perfection. It began with something seemingly insignificant. A hushed phone call answered with a rapid glance over the shoulder, a momentary pause when Lucas was alone in the room. At first, I dismissed these occurrences as quirks in a busy life, remnants of a past that held little meaning. But the small oddities began to accumulate. There were mornings when Lucas would leave the house with a vague excuse, his eyes distant as if burdened by some secret. A recurring mention of a coworker named Jenna became almost a ritual in his casual conversation. "Oh, Jenna was saying," he would start, only to be cut off by a quickly changed subject. I tried to reassure myself that Jenna was simply a friendly colleague, a footnote in a long list of everyday interactions. However, it wasn't long before my gut whispered a different story. I began to notice the subtle changes, the furtive glances at his phone, the hurried text messages he received in the dead of night, and the inexplicable time gaps in his schedule. Every time I asked a question, his answers felt rehearsed, measured, and tinged with a nervous energy. I watched as our perfect illusion started to crumble, leaving me with a gnawing suspicion that something was terribly wrong. My intuition, once a comforting guide, transformed into a relentless interrogator. The very trust that had once defined us now became the source of my torment. I started to question every unaccounted moment, every pause in his laughter, every excuse that failed to satisfy my growing need for truth. I told myself that I was simply overthinking, a victim of my own insecurities, but deep down I knew that the signs were too many to ignore. Late one evening, after an especially quiet dinner where the usual sparkle in Lucas's eyes had dimmed, I found myself alone in our living room with a cold cup of tea. I sat there, the silence heavy around me, and stared at the patterned rug beneath my feet. In that stillness, every memory of our early days, every whispered plan and tender promise, clashed with the present reality. I felt betrayed by the very person I had trusted with my heart. The internal battle raged on as I wrestled with conflicting emotions, the desire to believe in our love and the overwhelming suspicion that something was amiss. I began to notice the incongruities in his behavior. There were days when he'd return home later than usual without a clear explanation, and nights when his phone would buzz with messages that he hurriedly deleted whenever I was near. Each unexplained absence and every secretive glance piled up like weight on my chest, slowly smothering the warmth that had once radiated between us. The final blow came on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I had been tidying up the living room, a ritual that normally cleared my mind, and found myself aimlessly scrolling through our shared digital photos. As I flipped through the images, one particular photograph caught my eye. It was a selfie Lucas had taken at work, taken during what he described as a team lunch. But in the background, I noticed a figure I didn't recognize, a woman with a confident smile and an air of familiarity. Her presence, so casually captured in a moment that was supposed to celebrate our shared life, sent my mind reeling. My heart pounded with a mix of disbelief and dread. That evening, while Lucas was out at an office event, I took a deep breath and decided to follow the trail of subtle clues that had haunted me for weeks. I quietly retrieved his phone from his study, a space we both once regarded as a sanctuary of shared memories, and began to sift through his messages. What I found were numerous conversations that I could no longer ignore. Hidden among the mundane work-related texts were explicit messages, laden with affection and desire, addressed to someone named Jenna. The words leaped off the screen like daggers, each one a confirmation of my worst fears. I stared in disbelief as screenshots of their exchanges filled my vision, each message a testament to the betrayal that had been unfolding right before my eyes. The explicit nature of their communication left no room for misinterpretation. My stomach churned, and the reality of Lucas's infidelity crashed over me like a tidal wave. It wasn't just the existence of Jenna, it was the depth of their secret world, the careful planning behind every hidden dinner and every stolen moment. In that moment, the life we had built together turned into a labyrinth of lies and deceit. Every shared dream and whispered secret now felt like a cruel illusion, a mirage meant to keep me in the dark. Anger, raw and unfiltered, surged through my veins. I felt foolish for having trusted so completely, for allowing myself to be deceived by the very person who had vowed to be my partner for life. I couldn't sit still. For days, I oscillated between an almost numb disbelief and a burning desire for retribution. I was consumed by a need to reclaim the dignity that Lucas's betrayal had stripped from me. I couldn't let him rewrite our narrative, one where I was the naive partner who forgave too easily. No, I had to ensure that every trace of his infidelity would be exposed, leaving no room for redemption in his desperate appeals for forgiveness. As the shock subsided, I found clarity in the midst of the chaos. I decided that if Lucas ever hoped to salvage his fractured image or mend the irreparable breach of trust, he would have to contend with the full force of the consequences. I began to formulate a plan that was as meticulously calculated as it was emotionally charged. This wasn't about petty revenge, it was about reclaiming the power he had so carelessly taken from me. I wanted the world and Lucas to see the truth of his duplicity, leaving him no avenue for redemption. The idea took root slowly at first, nurtured by long nights of introspection and fierce determination. I started documenting every detail of his indiscretions. I became both investigator and archivist, piecing together a dossier that would leave no stone unturned. Screenshots of their explicit exchanges were carefully saved and organized. I gathered digital receipts from secret dinners, logged timestamps, and even captured geolocation data that pinpointed their clandestine meetings. Every piece of evidence was a testament to the betrayal, a bulletproof record of Lucas's betrayal with Jenna. In the days that followed, I secluded myself in our apartment, turning it into a command center for my mission. The once warm space now buzzed with the energy of determined purpose. I transformed our living room into an office of retribution, where every table, every drawer, became a repository of evidence. I set up a secure digital archive and printed copies of all the incriminating data. Each file, each carefully curated screenshot, was a reminder that I was in control now. I was no longer the passive recipient of hurtful secrets. I was the architect of my own vindication. I sought advice from a trusted friend, someone who had always been my anchor in turbulent times. Over coffee in a quiet cafe, I laid out my plan in careful detail. My friend listened with a mix of sympathy and admiration. "You deserve the truth to be known," she said. "If he ever thinks he can just waltz back into your life, he'll have to face what you've discovered." Her words emboldened me. I wasn't just planning to expose his infidelity. I was planning to dismantle the very facade he had constructed, to show everyone that trust, once betrayed, leaves scars that time cannot easily heal. I spent countless hours rehearsing every detail in my head, visualizing the moment when I would reveal the truth. I knew that the opportunity would come during a celebration that held a bitter irony, the anniversary we had once cherished as a symbol of our love. Lucas had planned an intimate gathering with close friends and family, a night meant to honor the milestones of our journey together. I resolved that this would be the stage for his undoing, a final, irrevocable moment of truth that would leave no space for remorse or escape. As the anniversary celebration approached, I maintained a calm, composed demeanor in public. Lucas, oblivious to the brewing storm, continued his role as the charming partner, confident in the illusion of normalcy. Every smile he flashed, every toast he raised, was now a painful reminder of how deeply I had been deceived. Yet, in the midst of the celebration, I remained focused on my objective. I meticulously coordinated every detail with a trusted accomplice, a tech-savvy friend who had the know-how to commandeer the event's audio-visual system without drawing suspicion. I watched from afar as Lucas moved through the room, his laughter mingling with the chatter of our guests, his charm still effective despite the rot festering beneath. The room was filled with people who believed in the story we had built, a story that now teetered on the edge of exposure. I couldn't help but feel a mix of sorrow and grim satisfaction. The love that had once been my sanctuary had been defiled by betrayal, and now, with every carefully gathered piece of evidence, I was poised to reclaim my power. The anniversary celebration was set in a softly lit banquet hall, decorated in the elegant hues of twilight. Soft music drifted in the background as friends and family mingled, sharing memories and raising glasses in tribute to a couple they believed to be unbreakable. I arrived early, my heart steady yet burning with a cold determination. I moved through the preparations like a shadow, quiet, observant, and resolute. My accomplice had already arranged for a discreet projection system to be set up in one corner of the hall, its screen hidden behind drapes until the appointed moment. I had rehearsed every word I would never have to say aloud. Instead, the evidence would speak for itself. As the guests settled into their seats and Lucas took the stage to deliver his heartfelt speech about our journey together, I felt time slow to a crawl. Every second was imbued with the gravity of what was to come. I sat at our table, my eyes fixed on Lucas as he recounted memories of our first meeting, our shared dreams, and the milestones we had celebrated together. The sincerity in his voice was now a cruel reminder of the lies that underpinned every moment. Then, just as he reached the peak of his speech, a moment meant to be the emotional highlight, the lights dimmed. The room hushed. A spotlight fell on the hidden screen as the drapes parted with a quiet flourish. What followed was a cascade of images and messages that unfolded like a damning confession. The slideshow began innocuously, showing everyday moments of our life together, vacations, birthdays, quiet dinners. Then, the tone shifted abruptly. One by one, the images transformed into proof of betrayal. Screenshots of Lucas's explicit messages with Jenna flashed on the screen, each accompanied by timestamps and geolocation data. The evidence was irrefutable. Gasps echoed in the room as faces turned from curiosity to horror, and Lucas's confident mask shattered in real time. I sat there, emotion churning within me, a cocktail of sorrow, anger, and an almost clinical resolve. In that final devastating moment of public exposure, Lucas's pleas for redemption were drowned out by the undeniable truth. The weight of betrayal was now laid bare for everyone to see, and there was no room for the excuses he might offer. I had left no avenue for forgiveness. The consequences of his actions were etched in digital ink and displayed for all to witness. In the stunned silence that followed, the atmosphere in the hall was electric with shock and disbelief. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the image of the man they thought they knew with the betrayal now on full display. Lucas's eyes darted about the room, searching desperately for an escape, but there was none. The carefully curated image of trust had collapsed into a chaotic display of treachery, leaving no room for the redemption he might have once hoped for. The slideshow continued its relentless march through the timeline of his deception, a digital testament to every secret meeting, every covert conversation. In that moment, I realized that my carefully orchestrated act of retribution was not driven by a desire for revenge alone, but by the need to reclaim my own dignity. I had taken the narrative from Lucas, stripping away the veneer of normalcy, to expose the harsh reality of betrayal. In the ensuing moments, some of our guests began to murmur amongst themselves. The shock slowly gave way to a collective understanding. Lucas's betrayal was not just a personal failing, but a breach of trust that had far-reaching consequences. I observed silently, feeling both the crushing weight of loss and the liberating power of truth. It was a bitter pill to swallow, yet a necessary step in the path toward reclaiming my life. As the night wore on, the hall emptied of its stunned occupants, and the once celebratory space became a silent mausoleum of broken promises. Lucas was escorted out, his pleas echoing in the empty corridors, a man stripped of his carefully constructed illusions. I remained behind, not out of guilt, but as a silent witness to the culmination of months of pain, suspicion, and betrayal. I had delivered my message with unyielding precision, leaving no room for his redemption. In the quiet aftermath, I began to understand that this was not the end of my story. Though the scars of betrayal would take time to heal, I had taken the first irrevocable step in reclaiming my sense of self. Every piece of evidence that I had painstakingly collected became a reminder that I was more than the victim of an unfaithful partner. I was a woman who had the strength to redefine her destiny. I spent the following days in a reflective solitude, sorting through the remnants of our shattered life. I revisited old photographs, letters, and mementos that once symbolized a future we had planned together. Now, each memory carried the bittersweet weight of what had been lost. Yet, in that process, I discovered an inner resolve. The betrayal, as painful as it was, had stripped away the illusions that once masked my true potential. It forced me to confront the reality of my own worth, beyond the confines of a relationship that had proven to be built on deception. I began to draft a plan for the future, a vision of a life where I would no longer be defined by the actions of another, but by the strength and clarity of my own convictions. The raw honesty of that night had freed me from the shackles of a love that had promised forever, but delivered only heartbreak. I resolved to rebuild, not by forgetting the past, but by transforming the pain into a stepping stone toward a brighter, self-determined future. In the quiet moments that followed, I often found myself questioning the nature of trust and betrayal. How could the person I loved, who had seemed so integral to my dreams, shatter the very foundation of our shared life? These questions haunted me as I navigated the early days of solitude. Yet, even as I grappled with my grief, a newfound clarity began to emerge. I realized that betrayal, while devastating, was not an indictment of my worth. Instead, it was a harsh lesson, a crucible through which I would forge a deeper understanding of myself. I poured my thoughts into a journal, documenting every emotion with unfiltered honesty. The pages became a repository for the anguish and anger, but also for moments of unexpected liberation. With every word I wrote, I reclaimed a piece of the self that had been diminished by Lucas's infidelity. I came to understand that leaving no room for redemption wasn't about denying the possibility of forgiveness for others. It was about refusing to allow his betrayal to define who I was or the future I envisioned. By the time the dust had settled, on that fateful anniversary night, I had entered a new chapter of my life, one defined by resilience and the unyielding commitment to my own truth. The evidence I had compiled was not just a weapon against Lucas's deception, it was a testament to my inner strength. Every screenshot, every timestamp, every geolocation log was a piece of the puzzle that had revealed the stark reality of his betrayal. And with that reality in hand, I had made a choice: to let go of the false narrative of our love and to embrace a future built solely on authenticity and self-respect. I began to see that the process of dismantling the remnants of our shared life was also a journey of self-discovery. I reconnected with old friends and rediscovered hobbies long neglected in the wake of our intense intimacy. I started taking long walks at dusk, allowing the cool evening air to clear my mind as I contemplated what it truly meant to be free from the bonds of deceit. Each day, I reclaimed a little more of the person I was before the lies had taken hold. I also recognized the importance of finding solace in creative expression. I returned to my love of writing, capturing my raw emotions in stories and poems that poured out like an unrestrained river of truth. In the creative process, I found both healing and empowerment, a way to transform pain into art that resonated with others who had suffered similar betrayals. The anniversary night had been the catalyst, but the journey toward reclaiming my life was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, I began to embrace my solitude with a sense of clarity and determination. The shock of that night slowly receded into the background, replaced by a quiet resolve that radiated from within. I realized that while Lucas might have thought he could hide behind lies and deceit, the truth had a way of surfacing in the most dramatic of fashions, and I had been the one to bring it to light. As I stood before a mirror one evening, reflecting on the person I had become, I no longer saw the hurt and vulnerability that had once defined me. I saw strength, determination, and a readiness to step boldly into the future. I had left no room for redemption for a partner who had betrayed me, and in doing so, I had paved the way for my own rebirth. Now, as I close the first chapter of this turbulent saga, I am aware that the road ahead will be fraught with both challenges and opportunities. The wounds of betrayal may never fully disappear, but they will serve as a constant reminder of the power I hold over my own destiny. I have learned that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt only in the light of truth and self-respect. And while I may never fully understand the reasons behind Lucas's choices, I am resolved to move forward, carrying with me the hard-earned wisdom of his deception. In the days to come, I plan to embark on a journey of self-reclamation, a quest to rebuild my life piece by piece. There will be moments of sadness, and perhaps even regret for the time lost in a relationship that turned out to be a mirage. Yet, I am determined to forge a future where I am defined not by the scars of betrayal, but by the resilience that rises in their place. As the final notes of that anniversary night echo in my memory, I am left with the undeniable truth. Betrayal may strip away the illusions of love, but it can also uncover the depths of our inner strength. In exposing Lucas's secrets to the world, I have taken the first irrevocable step toward rediscovering who I truly am. A woman unafraid to confront her past, reclaim her power, and build a future free from the shadows of deceit. In the immediate aftermath of that fateful anniversary night, the echoes of shattered trust reverberated through every corner of my life. The banquet hall, once vibrant with celebration, now lay silent and heavy with the weight of betrayal. In the days that followed, I found myself moving through a haze of disbelief, punctuated by moments of intense clarity. Every conversation, every interaction was tinted by the knowledge of what had transpired. The evidence of Lucas's indiscretions burned into the minds of everyone who had been present. I retreated from the world I once knew. The constant murmurs of gossip and the sympathetic looks from friends were a bitter reminder that the life I had once shared with Lucas was irrevocably over. I spent long hours alone in our apartment, each room echoing with memories that now served as painful relics of a bygone era. The space, which had once been filled with laughter and dreams, was now a museum of betrayals, a gallery of images and tokens that betrayed the life I thought I knew. In this period of solitude, the initial shock of the betrayal began to transform. No longer was I simply a victim of Lucas's deceit. I was the sole author of my own future. I resolved that the evidence I had gathered, every carefully preserved screenshot and digital receipt, would not be a tool for endless recrimination, but rather a catalyst for change. I had left no room for his redemption, and now I would leave no room for my own stagnation. The first step in this new chapter was accepting the truth, however brutal it might be. I allowed myself to grieve the loss of the relationship, mourning not only the love that had been tarnished, but also the illusion of invincibility I once believed in. My grief was raw and unfiltered, a mix of anger, sorrow, and a deep-seated yearning for justice. Yet, as the days passed, that grief slowly morphed into determination. I recognized that every scar, every tear shed in that lonely apartment was the foundation upon which I would build a new life. I began by transforming my living space into a sanctuary for healing. Every object that reminded me of Lucas was either packed away or discarded. I painted over the walls that once echoed with promises of forever, replacing them with bold colors that reflected the strength I was beginning to reclaim. The process was cathartic, a physical act of exorcising memories that no longer served me. With every stroke of paint, I felt the burden of the past lighten, making way for the possibility of renewal. In the weeks that followed, I sought out the company of those who understood the agony of betrayal. I reconnected with old friends, people who had always seen the strength within me even when I could not. Their gentle reassurances and shared stories of personal upheaval were a balm to my wounded heart. At weekly gatherings over coffee and quiet dinners, we exchanged experiences of love lost and rediscovered, finding solace in the common thread of human imperfection. One evening, at a small, intimate art gallery opening, I encountered Sophia, a woman with eyes that seemed to have witnessed her own share of heartache. Over wine and soft jazz, we shared our stories. Sophia spoke of a past marred by betrayal and the long, painful journey towards self-forgiveness. In her words, I recognized a mirror of my own struggles, a journey from brokenness to wholeness. Through our budding friendship, I learned that even in the wake of the most devastating betrayals, the human spirit could not only endure but also flourish. It was through these new connections that I discovered the transformative power of vulnerability. I began to attend a support group for those who had suffered infidelity. In a circle of strangers bound by shared pain, I finally realized that my experience, as unique as it felt, was also part of a larger tapestry of human resilience. In those sessions, we spoke candidly about our losses and triumphs, our tears mingling with laughter in a testament to the complex beauty of recovery. As the raw edges of my grief began to smooth out, I rediscovered the person I had been before the weight of betrayal threatened to define me. I returned to old passions that had once filled me with joy, a love of writing, of painting, and of long, reflective walks along quiet city streets. I picked up my journal again, letting my pen spill out the truths that had been pent up inside for so long. Each word was a declaration of independence, a refusal to be shackled by the remnants of a relationship built on lies. I began to write not just as a way to exorcise my pain, but as a means to celebrate the newfound strength that had emerged from my suffering. My journal entries soon evolved into short stories and poems that spoke of betrayal, loss, and the fierce determination to rise above it all. In sharing these writings on a personal blog, I found that my story resonated with others. Each comment, each message of support, reinforcing the idea that even the deepest wounds could pave the way for incredible transformation. I took solace in nature as well. Every morning before the city awoke, I would take long walks in a nearby park, letting the quiet whispers of the wind and the rustling leaves guide me through moments of reflection. Those solitary walks became a daily ritual of self-reclamation, a time to honor my past without allowing it to define my future. I began to see that the pain of betrayal was not an endpoint, but rather a turning point, a necessary chapter in the narrative of my evolution. In the midst of my personal transformation, I began to consider how my experience could serve a greater purpose. The dossier I had meticulously compiled, the undeniable evidence of Lucas's deceit, was a stark reminder of the costs of betrayal. Yet, it also offered a glimmer of hope. The hope that truth, once unleashed, could be the impetus for societal change. I began to write essays on the subject of infidelity and trust, exploring the psychological, emotional, and social ramifications of betrayal. These pieces, filled with raw honesty and introspection, found their way into online forums and eventually into a well-regarded magazine that focused on relationships and personal growth. Through these writings, I discovered an unexpected power, the power of vulnerability to foster change. Readers reached out, sharing their own stories of hurt and healing, and in that collective chorus of voices, I found a sense of solidarity. The experience that had once isolated me in my grief was now connecting me with others who had traversed similar dark paths. I was no longer defined solely by my pain, but by my capacity to transform that pain into a beacon of hope for others. Yet, even as I moved forward, the memories of Lucas's betrayal continued to haunt me in quiet moments. There were nights when the shadows of the past crept into my dreams, whispering doubts and regrets. I knew that true healing required not just moving forward, but also confronting the ghosts that lingered in the corners of my mind. With the support of my newfound community and the guidance of a compassionate therapist, I began a deliberate process of revisiting those painful memories, not to relive the hurt, but to understand it fully. In these sessions, I learned to dissect the layers of my grief, recognizing the subtle interplay between love, loss, and the fear of being vulnerable again. I came to understand that my decision to leave no room for redemption was not a call for endless retribution, but a necessary boundary, a declaration that I would not allow someone else's actions to dictate my future. In the quiet intimacy of therapy, I slowly began to forgive, not Lucas, but myself, for the self-doubt and the misplaced hope that had once blinded me. This process was neither quick nor easy, but it was essential for transforming the remnants of betrayal into a source of personal empowerment. With time, the wounds began to close, replaced by the soft glow of resilience. I made a conscious decision to step into the world with renewed purpose. I enrolled in creative writing workshops where I met others who, like me, were trying to find their voice after heartbreak. These sessions became a crucible for transformation, each class a small victory over the past. I began to see the beauty in imperfection and to appreciate the strength that came from embracing my vulnerabilities. One crisp autumn day, as leaves danced in the gentle breeze, I stood before a small audience at a local literary event. Nervous yet resolute, I read an excerpt from a piece I had written, a story of betrayal, pain, and the gradual discovery of self-worth. As I spoke, I felt the weight of my past recede, replaced by the empowering realization that I was the master of my own destiny. The audience's applause was not just a recognition of my talent, but a celebration of the courage it took to transform heartbreak into art. In the months that followed, my life began to take on new hues. I moved to a new neighborhood, one that promised a fresh start, far from the echoes of old memories. My new apartment was modest but filled with light, a symbol of the rebirth that I was crafting day by day. I redecorated with bold colors and inviting textures, each choice reflecting the vibrant energy that was steadily replacing the desolation of the past. I also embraced new professional opportunities. Encouraged by the positive feedback on my writings, I accepted a position as a freelance columnist for a magazine that focused on relationship dynamics and personal growth. In this role, I was able to delve into the complexities of love and betrayal, drawing upon my own experiences to offer insight and guidance to others. My words, once fueled solely by anger, now carried a nuanced blend of empathy, introspection, and hope. As the calendar marked nearly a year since that fateful anniversary, night, I knew that a final act of closure was needed, a confrontation that would definitively sever the ties to a past marred by deception. I arranged to meet Lucas one last time, not for reconciliation, nor to extract apologies, but simply to confront him with the raw truth of our shared history. In a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of our former mutual acquaintances, I looked him in the eye and recounted the journey that had transformed me. I spoke of the betrayal, the evidence, and the painful process of reclaiming my self-worth. Lucas listened, his silence a mixture of regret and resignation. In that moment, I realized that the confrontation was not for his benefit, it was for mine, a final declaration that I would no longer allow him or the memory of his deceit to dictate my future. Returning from that final meeting, I felt a profound sense of liberation. The act of facing Lucas one last time was cathartic, a symbolic severing of the last tether to a relationship that had long since betrayed the trust we once shared. I realized that true empowerment lay not in punishing him endlessly, but in reclaiming my narrative and allowing my future to shine unburdened by his actions. Letting go was not an act of forgiveness for his sake, but a necessary step toward embracing the life I deserved. In the quiet aftermath of these final confrontations, I began to write a new chapter, a memoir of my journey from the depths of betrayal to the heights of personal rebirth. The pages of this memoir were filled with raw emotion, hard-won lessons, and a deep gratitude for the strength I had discovered in myself. I realized that my story was not one of endless sorrow, but one of survival, transformation, and above all, hope. I continued to travel, both as a means of escape and as a way to broaden my perspective. I ventured to distant cities, immersed myself in diverse cultures, and learned that the world was full of opportunities for renewal. Every new experience was a brushstroke on the canvas of my future, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. 1 year after that dark anniversary, I organized a small gathering, a celebration of life, art, and the triumph of the human will. Friends, old and new, gathered in a cozy loft filled with light, laughter, and the soft strains of live music. It was an evening dedicated not to the pain of the past, but to the beauty of moving forward. As I mingled with guests who had witnessed my transformation firsthand, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for every experience that had led me here. I had learned that even the deepest betrayals could give birth to the most resilient forms of love. Love for oneself, for one's art, and for the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. Now, as I sit by a window overlooking a city bathed in the golden light of dusk, I reflect on the journey that has brought me to this moment. The scars of betrayal remain, etched into my memory as silent testaments to a time when trust was shattered and illusions crumbled. Yet these scars have become part of the intricate mosaic of my identity, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we possess the strength to rebuild, reinvent, and ultimately thrive. I have come to understand that leaving no room for redemption was never about denying the possibility of growth or forgiveness. It was about drawing a firm boundary against those who would dare to undermine my self-worth. It was a declaration that I would not allow the actions of another to define my future. In reclaiming my narrative, I discovered that true power lay not in endless retribution, but in the courage to embrace every facet of my experience, learn from it, and then step boldly into the light of a new beginning. My journey is far from over. The pages of my memoir remain unwritten, each day offering the promise of new experiences, new challenges, and new triumphs. I continue to write my story with unwavering conviction, cherishing the knowledge that I am the sole architect of my destiny. And as I look to the horizon, I am filled with hope, a hope that radiates from the lessons of the past and lights the way to an even brighter future. For every person who has ever felt the sting of betrayal, who has ever wondered if trust could ever be rebuilt, know this: within you lies an indomitable strength. Your scars are not symbols of defeat, but emblems of survival, proof that you have faced the storm and emerged stronger. In my own journey, I discovered that the path to true redemption starts with accepting the truth, no matter how painful, and then daring to dream of a future where you are the master of your own fate. As I close this chapter and open the door to the unwritten future, I invite you to join me in celebrating every step of the journey, from the bitter taste of betrayal to the sweet, liberating promise of rebirth. The story of my life is one of unyielding courage, a testament to the transformative power of truth, and above all, a reminder that no matter how dark the night may seem, the dawn is always just beyond the horizon.